Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Hiring Manager. Today, I am very excited to interview Neal Richardson. Neal is president and CEO of SLDC, which stands for St. Louis Development Corporation. Prior to this position, Neal served in several leadership roles at U.S. Bank for nearly a decade, including Director of Business Impact Group and Head of Financial Education Strategy. For those of you in St. Louis, you may recognize Neal's face as he has been interviewed regularly by media outlets including KSDK Channel 5, the St. Louis Business Journal, and St. Louis Post-Dispatch for his efforts both at the SLDC and for Dream Builders for Equity, a nonprofit that Neal co-founded. It's a pleasure to have you here today, Neal.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm excited to be here with you as well.
I'm super excited to have you.
Thank you.
So before I delve into your current role at SLDC, I'm curious about your previous background. What was your career path like at US Bank? What attracted you to the organization?
Yeah, so Leslie, my career really jumped off with me starting as an intern in the commercial real estate field now almost 17 years ago, which is it's
Oh,
crazy to
wow.
even imagine that I've been in the industry for that period of time. So I started off as a commercial real estate intern doing data entry for Cushman and Wakefield. At the time, the name of the organization was Collier's Charlie Morton Tucker. So it was really being able to get my feet wet and really understand the ins and outs of commercial real estate. From there, after I completed my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from Webster University, I was hired as a full-time position as a lease administrator for a portfolio of properties located in Manhattan, New York. So I had the opportunity to get right into the deep end of commercial real estate in one of the most fast-paced markets in the entire country and really the entire world. So I got an extremely great experience there. Then I came back to St. Louis to really focus on property management of several hospital portfolios that would under the portfolio led by Cassidy Turley at the time. And so as I moved forward in my career, I found my way to Webster University to get my MBA degree with the emphasis in finance. And while there, I took on a role at US Bank, Community Development Corporation, now known as US Bank Impact Finance. Shows how long I've been in the industry. All of the companies
Yeah.
out there that have now changed their names as they've merged and evolved over time. However, as I started at US Bank, I started as an analyst, really focused on the new market tax credit, historic tax credit investment platform, then moving into their underwriting role, also known as their project management function. And from there, I really got a deep understanding of just not commercial real estate or real estate investing, but also how real estate can make an impact on low to moderate income communities. Communities that are reflective of the neighborhood in which I grew up, which is in North St. Louis City, where the majority of the population is African American, around 98%. And then also the average median income ranges between $25,000 to $30,000 over the years. And so it's a very low income distressed community. But I've seen how real estate development can really transform an area to create economic opportunity for individuals to be able to improve their quality of life every day. And from there, it really opened my eyes into not just real estate investment from a financial perspective, but the social impact that investments into real estate development can have on a community. So being from a community that has some of those challenges with real estate investing, and also having challenges as it relates to income mobility and economic mobility, it was really, I seen a gap in the opportunities for the students, the youth that live in those areas And that's what led me to start Dream Builders for Equity, which is a nonprofit organization that provide youth with the necessary skills to escape poverty, build wealth, and invest in their future through real estate development and entrepreneurship. Initially, when we co-founded the organization, myself and one of my best friends, Michael Woods, in 2016, started with 5 students in one home. Now the organization has grown to over 200 students, and they have an entire neighborhood that's being redeveloped of houses that are being made for sale to first-time home buyers, a daycare facility, as well as a new bank branch that they have recently acquired to be their new headquarters to teach financial literacy for youth in that community, and ultimately being able to support the overall economic growth of that neighborhood. So it's been really exciting to see one of my brainchilds begin to grow and expand over the years. And as I started Dream Builders, there was an opportunity that came at US Bank around financial education and really take their financial education strategy, leverage it as a strong asset to drive business growth. So I led the US Bank financial education for about a year prior to coming back to US Bank Community Development Corporation to start their business impact group, which was really focused on investing in women, people of color, and low-income communities, leveraging the full suite of products that the fifth largest bank in the country had to offer. We increased the investments with Black banks, businesses, and communities to over $250 million in our first year of existence, and now being able to see that grow to hundreds of millions of dollars being invested across the country through one of my brainchilds that I was able to start. So, I like to get into opportunities where I see challenges that could be addressed and where my talents and unique expertise and experiences can really help make a difference in the lives of people while also driving economic growth. And that is really what attracted me to my role here at St. Louis Development Corporation as the president and CEO.
Very
The
cool.
Mayor Jones, is the first Black woman mayor in the city of St. Louis, illustrious history. And when she took on that position, she had a focus on rebuilding North St. Louis City, again, the area in which I grew up. But she also understood to achieve that we had to work with the community to attract development that actually supports the people that live there today, but also to be able to attract people that are coming into that neighborhood from across the city, the region, and the country. But we only way that we can do that is through the investments into people, into real estate, into products that actually can stimulate those markets. And so we created a strategy called the Economic Justice Action Plan that's focused on empowering, developing, and transforming the city through a more vibrant, just, and growing economy where all people can thrive. And so we are on an ambitious journey to invest over $1 billion towards that strategy and plan by 2030. The mayor and the board of aldermen located in the city of St. Louis has invested and committed already close to $280 million through the American Rescue Plan Act funds toward these efforts. We've been leveraging other private and philanthropic dollars to be able to achieve that $1 billion goal. And we're starting to see the first projects come to completion now in North St. Louis City and areas in Southeast City that have seen disinvestment, continuous disinvestment for over a decade. So I'm really excited about that opportunity and to see that growth happen in areas that as a child I've seen were vibrant and robust, but have deteriorated over my lifetime.
Absolutely. Wow, that's amazing. And I love that, you described that path as well from getting your master's to working like real estate and then on to US Bank and how that passion it seemed like for helping with equity and attempting and doing what you can to level the playing field. So that's amazing. And you mentioned also Dream Builders for Equity, a little bit on that. I wanted to be clear on what is Dream Builders for Equity's mission. I kind of get an idea of why you were inspired to launch it, but what is Dream Builders for Equity's mission?
Yeah, so the mission is again to help youth, underserved youth, at-risk youth escape poverty, build wealth, invest in their future through real estate development and entrepreneurship. And what we did was work with students that live in a community, um, focused on redeveloping that community and then having ownership in that community itself. So as the students actually work on the projects, they receive up to $15 an hour as they're working alongside skilled tradesmen, but then they're also getting ownership and equity into the property. And so once the properties are sold, a portion of those profits actually goes to the students in the form of a stipend and a scholarship towards whether they go to directly into the workforce or whether they decide to go to a 2 or 4 year university. They have that seed capital to be able to purchase books, handle travel, and some of those other educational and workforce related expenses that are necessary for them to be successful and get that pathway and really the launching pad for their future. Also, the students journal their experience through the program. Those journals are then turned into a book. The students actually, through a retail store that has just been opened in North City called House of Vision, the students design clothes and sell clothes out of that store as well. And so it's really creating ownership models where the students are not just earning an income, but they're also putting on an entrepreneurial hat and the mindset to be able to learn not just how to earn an income, but how to leverage that income into wealth building opportunities. So that's really the focus of Dream Builders, and now being able to expand that across the city with St. Louis Development Corporation of driving economic mobility is not just around income. Income is the first step, but the ultimate goal is wealth building, and that creates generational wealth for communities to build on and leverage. Currently in our country, we have a wealth gap of 1 to 10. So the average Black household has 1/10 of the average wealth of a white household, and that gap continues to grow exponentially just because of inflation, because of the assets that have been transferred over generations, and the challenge it takes to be able to catch up. So those are some of the interventions that we are trying to make within that those challenging moments in time for individuals, for residents, for businesses to be able to close that gap and then continue to see the overall economic growth from those investments impact the entire city and all of our population over a period of time.
Wow. And that's a great initiative and great thing to push forward. And is that essentially SLDC's cause or mission to close that gap and provide more economic opportunities?
Well, the overall mission is really focused on stimulating private growth and development, economic development within our city. But in order to achieve that, we must make oversized investments into areas that the market cannot invest into just because of market conditions. For example, I'll use North St. Louis City. We are investing into neighborhoods to support housing developers that are Black owned to be able to create new markets in those neighborhoods. Due to redlining and other racial covenants, there are appraisal gaps that exist to date based on some of those previous racist policies that were in place that are now outlawed, but it still had its detrimental impact on future generations. And so for us, investing into these neighborhoods where a private institution or financial institution does not have the capacity to take on that type of risk, SLDC steps in and makes that investment. We provide that subsidy in order to provide the mitigant for the appraisal gap. And so as a developer is redeveloping these homes that are made for sale, they can sell them at a lower value because we are able to forgive a portion of that debt to construct that home. And then we're also providing on the supply side to the borrower, providing them the opportunity to get home buyers assistance. So through the American Rescue Plan Act, we are contributing close to $4 million to support homeowners to purchase homes in neighborhoods that have not seen mortgages originated in over 10 years,
Wow.
what we call HUD qualified census tracts. And so these individuals are now able to purchase homes, bring down that overall mortgage, getting instant equity into the property, building that wealth. So we're building the capacity of developers, we're building wealth for homeowners, and ultimately continuing to see that income grow over time, and then attracting businesses, retailers, and other workforce opportunities to those neighborhoods to sustain that growth long term. And so we're starting to see those initial fruits of that labor come to fruition now, with new houses being developed, having new home owners move into these areas, and now having businesses excited to actually come into these neighborhoods because there's now income that can show that there will be enough density in these areas to drive commercial growth and retail growth. And so that's really the focus of SLDC, through an example of a project that we're investing in the city.
That's fabulous, fabulous work that you're doing, as you mentioned, like building, also helping build wealth and help homeowners and overall help the growth of the community. And hopefully, as you mentioned, with those statistics from 1 to 10,
Yeah,
bring that gap, right?
exactly. And then, we're also one of our, I guess, primary pillars of our work is business retention, expansion, and attraction. So we go out and aim to attract world-class businesses to the city of St. Louis, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's office, any business that's really can drive job growth and income growth in our market. We want to get them to St. Louis. So, we've had major projects with Procter and Gamble, $180 million expansion of their facility in the city of St. Louis, hiring another 100+ jobs in North St. Louis City has been one example of a project that we've worked on. But also we have, a stadium that we've just partnered with, the St. Louis SC, CDSC, here in the city of St. Louis, at SLDC worked in partnership with them on incentives to support the development of not just the stadium, but the infrastructure around the stadium. And then supporting major projects such as the National Geospatial Agency, a $1.7 billion project, again, in North St. Louis City to drive that growth, the infrastructure there, bringing now over 3,000 jobs to that neighborhood, and then rebuilding that neighborhood around that facility itself. So again, we have large projects to small projects. We also are responsible for our land bank. So the city of St. Louis has the oldest land bank in the country and the third largest. We have over 10,000 parcels in our inventory that we're working every day to get back on the tax roll. And then also our Port Authority is under my purview as well as the CEO of the St. Louis Development Corporation. So we manage the mooring leases and any other port improvements that are necessary in order to drive economic growth along the port. And overall, we have 9 development boards that achieve the purpose of SLDC, which is, again, driving economic growth for the city of St. Louis.
Wow, wonderful. So being president and CEO of SLDC, what are your overall responsibilities? Is to lead these projects, to carry them out?
So as a CEO of the organization, my responsibility is really focused on developing strategy, driving a vision forward, and then being able to activate that strategy with other executive leaders within my leadership team. And so, again, my responsibility is to ensure that my leadership team understands the priorities that need to be executed on, and then they can work with their respective departments and teams, or even cross-functionally to implement that vision and strategy that we've agreed upon and set out. So I'm working continuously with my leadership team on a regular basis around setting those priorities, tracking the progress on those priorities, and ensuring that I'm removing all necessary barriers for them to be successful. And then also working with our administrative functions around HR, marketing and communications, finance, technology, to ensure that our staff have the appropriate resources to work as efficiently as possible to achieve those goals, working hand in hand. So we're currently hiring for the chief operating officer position that will manage many of the administrative functions from human resources to marketing and communications, also our finance and technology teams, to ensure as our business lines are implementing our strategy that we are working efficiently across functions and that we are operating at maximum capacity while managing our expenses and revenues in a much more transformative way, an effective way. So the COO will really be focused on driving operational efficiencies for our organizations and for our business lines to be able to achieve our goals that we've set out within the Economic Justice Action Plan.
Awesome. And how's that process been going so far of, the search for a COO?
Yeah, the search for the COO has been going great. We received a litany of applications with a broad set of experiences and backgrounds, from bank presidents to other chief operating officers at similar agencies, to city managers, to marketing specialists. And it's been interesting to see how each of those distinct experiences and backgrounds can bring support to help our organization move forward in a much more efficient manner. So I'm really excited about the process. I think I will learn a lot about what's possible through this interview process. And our current operations consultant is taking the first pass of screening candidates for me, scoring those candidates, reviewing those resumes. And then ultimately, I will be partaking in the first round of interviews with a panel of my leadership team that COO will engage and interact with on a day-to-day basis. Because I really feel as though it needs to be a decision made collectively. Ultimately, I am the final decision maker, but having others engaged in that process helps them have ownership in who we bring forward, and ensure that that person is someone that they would value and respect as well.
Yes, no, wonderful. And I love that it's as it is in most HR processes, but how your, team, how you all really interface to make sure collectively, kind of deciding who that next, in this example, COO will be. And kind of on that same topic, whether it's for the COO or other roles, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, but what are some questions that you and or your leadership team may ask a applicant that's applying for a specific SLDC position? What
Yeah,
are you looking for?
yeah, really values aligned. SLDC, when I came on board, we updated and revised our core values as an organization of being transparent and accountable, people-centered, data-focused, and also being able to ensure that we're moving in a more equitable manner, internal and external, to the agency. And so ensuring that the individual that we bring on board exudes those core values as a human being and how they show up. Because even though we try to separate our personal from our professional lives, I think we see people become more successful, especially nowadays, when you align that purpose with the role in which they are in, because they're able to bring them full selves in a more authentic way, and not just showing up to do a job, but they're showing up because they're passionate about the work that they do every day, and it just allows for a greater commitment to the overall vision and purpose of the organization. So that is one of the first things that I look for is being missions and value aligned. The second piece is really about their background and their
Mm.
experience. What do they bring to the table that's unique from what we have today? With the COO, for example, how do they work across many functional areas? How do they show authority or get accountability and get buy-in from departments in which they may not have formal authority over, but they still need to have that input and that be able to hold individuals accountable for delivering on particular tasks and priorities that I have set for the organization within a set period of time, and then measure that, and then also knowing what's raised to me versus what they can accomplish on their own. Because the goal for me by hiring somebody is how are they going to create more capacity for me and for the team to be able to think about the next 3 to 5 years and not always dealing with the challenges of today, and really being able to set that long-term vision, which is, again, my responsibility as the chief executive officer of the organization, and them being able to manage some of those decisions without necessarily needing to raise every question to me. So that was, again, another piece of being able to hold people accountable without formal authority, and then a way in which they manage the soft skills.
Mm.
Are they reasonable but firm, but not overbearing? And so I've had employees within this organization and others where they thought that every nail that they seen, they had to hammer it, right? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
maybe that isn't always the right approach for everybody. And so how do you motivate people without discouraging them or disrespecting them? How do you make sure that you value them but also hold them accountable to meeting the shared goals that we agreed upon? And so those are some of the unique challenges that I think this position will have to overcome,
Yeah.
because you're working with very strong leaders who have subject matter expertise in their particular area, but you're also pushing them towards achieving goals that we set. And you may not have that experience of economic development, real estate development, or loan products or grant programs, but you need to still be able to communicate effectively with them about the goals they need to meet. And so seeing, through the interview process, how will somebody handle those circumstances and situations when they're faced with a very contentious matter that needs to be addressed in a short
Mm.
period of time, and I may or may not be available to make that immediate decision, but I have that, given them that informal authority to do so.
Absolutely. And no, those are very like insightful things. And there is that delicate balance, like you mentioned, of right, of making sure that someone's assertive and can lead, but also shows that individuals are valued and being courteous and conscientious and all of those things. So that's very interesting. And in an interview, you and your team and whoever's assessing, the COO in this case or applicant, can kind of pick up the energy and read those things in person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, in terms of a resume, like more technical, which
Yeah.
obviously, I look at all the time, but from, a hiring aspect on your end, before you see the applicant, are there any pros, cons, things that you look for or don't prefer to see either way in a resume?
Yeah, obviously the most common is grammatical errors or spelling errors, and within a resume is always a red flag. Especially as I'm hiring for the COO, I need someone that's very focused on attention to detail. And if you can't get a resume correct, how can I trust you with leading my
Right.
organization when I'm not
Fair.
available? So that is important to ensure that they're able to communicate effectively. How do they articulate their previous experiences as it relates to the work that we are doing now? I think that relatedness
Mm.
is going to be critically important of communication. And again, that's why I mentioned earlier, it's not always about having the most deep level of subject matter expertise, but it's like, how are you able to align your values and your goals with other people's values and goals and the organization's values and goals to be able to show that within the resume. And what I would like to see within resumes and cover letters is for a candidate to be able to clearly exemplify how their experience will help accelerate the growth of SLDC and how their personal and professional experiences will be unique to the agency to help us achieve our shared goals. And so those are all things that I'm looking for in a resume outside of just, the basic grammatical uh, errors that I see. One interesting, I guess, tip that I would give is always put your resume in the PDF format. Sending it in Word is just not the best functionality. And I've had my hiring managers before and even my HR specialists reach out to candidates asking for resumes or a PDF version, and they still send back a Word version, and it just shows the inability to follow the directions and instructions.
Yes.
And then also the timeliness in which they reply. So
Mm,
if you submit a resume and then we follow up with submittal of a cover letter and it takes you 2 weeks to submit that cover letter, or if we say we need it by the end of the week and it comes over the weekend or the following week, it just goes to show that, obviously this isn't a priority for you.
exactly.
And also is a clear sign of their ability to stick to deadlines. So sometimes we may throw a
Mm.
deadline out there just to see how the person reacts to actually meeting that deadline, because this role, again, specifically the COO, is about ensuring that you're holding yourself and others accountable to those deadlines that we've set.
That's and I'm glad you brought that up. Two things that you brought up that one reminded me of a quick story I'll share. And but first you mentioned PDF versus Word, excuse me, format. And I'm glad that you mentioned a couple things that it sounds like for you or particular roles within SLDC that PDF is preferred. So, from a from a resume writing standpoint, I see why applicants probably submit in Word without getting too technical. They have like the applicant tracking systems that like scan and kind of pick up keywords better through the Word format. So even as a resume writer, I always let my clients know, send both documents,
Yeah.
send out a Word to general application processes
Yep. Yep.
to have a
Yep. Yep.
better probability of
Yeah.
triggering those keywords. However, as you mentioned, from the aspect of if you're whoever within the organization is saying to an applicant, please send a PDF, then on that aspect, you're directly
Right.
hearing
Yeah.
from the source. So yes,
Exactly.
so it
Exactly.
is interesting,
Exactly.
right? With like you
Yeah.
said, assessing, are they able to follow simple directions,
Right.
and
Yeah.
things of that aspect. The other thing that you mentioned, which is very true, looking back, is like you said, priority of the applicant. If someone from your team or yourself or someone from your team is following up and saying, can you submit this? And it's taking a longer period of time, as you mentioned, it may not be a priority. When I was very young, like in my early 20s, I was applying to a pretty good job actually. And it was between me and one other, you can see where this is going. The
Yeah.
hiring manager had reached out and asked me to like resend a document. It took me longer. I wasn't timely on checking my email. I did get down to the final interview, and the actual hiring manager said, we it is between you and another. We like you both greatly. I have a question. Why did it take you X amount of time? It wasn't crazy amount of time, but
Right. Right.
I
Right.
should have been more timely, and
Right.
I cannot remember what I said. I'm sure I said something, but but I didn't end up getting the role, and it taught me a valuable lesson. Again, I was young, and it wasn't my top priority, and it was clearly reflective that it wasn't. And things worked out. I love what
Yeah.
I'm doing now, but it just was a lesson that at the time, being young and needing to learn, it's like, yeah, I need to be more timely about these things. It's not just right. So that is something that
Yeah.
when you
And
said that, it made me think about
yeah, and then
X
one of
amount of
the
years ago.
other aspects is interview scheduling too. So my interviewer is working on scheduling interviews right now, and
Yes.
one of our top candidates hasn't responded with the time to actually set up and schedule the meeting. And we're like, oh, what's going on? They were very prompt
Mm.
about submitting their resume, submitting their cover letter, very responsive throughout the process. And now, as we're scheduling interviews, they haven't been as responsive. And so, one of the things, if you're going to be out of town and out of office, and not checking your emails regularly, ensuring that you have your auto replies on within your emails, just so the hiring manager knows that you have other family responsibilities and personal obligations, but it's not that you're being unresponsive. It's more so you just had other planned personal priorities, which again is understandable, but it
Yes.
just leaves something to wonder about, again, the priority of this position for the individual. So that's also, I guess, another good helpful tip
No,
to
that's a
have
That's
for
a
the
great tip. Being, like you said,
yeah.
communicative, putting those wave messages on or automatic replies on. And honestly, and I hate to say it this way because yes, emergencies and things happen. But if the job is really that important, even if you are doing something, you can
Oh
probably
yeah.
take 5 minutes to check.
Exactly. To
If
check
no
your
one's
email.
dying, then I
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
can take a few minutes to
yeah,
to check
definitely.
your emails. So yes, I agree there. So no, that's great advice. I'm curious, how many employees in general work for SLDC?
Yeah, so we have almost 90 employees within the organization. And when I came on board, we had about 64, 65. I had to make some immediate changes in the leadership team. It just wasn't a good cultural fit for what I was aiming to build. So we reduced it down to maybe about 50 employees or so. Then we had to scale it back up to about 90 employees. We brought on some consultants on our marketing and communications, our operations side of the house, our professional development side, to make sure that we were supporting our employees, and as we were really evolving our culture at SLDC into the next wave, that we had the proper support team on board to help us through that transition. And now being able to create a couple new departments within SLDC. One is really focused on strategic growth, and then also our economic empowerment team that is focused on small business, women, minority business enterprises, and ensuring that they're getting the resources they need to enter, grow,
Mhm.
and scale in their respective industries. It's been a big shift, but I've been really excited about the growth that we've had, and being able to attract other resources, whether it's public dollars, philanthropic capital, and even private investment to grow our staffing, has been great, and seeing that pay dividends over time to attract other capital to continue to scale is has been exciting. So it's we've been in growth mode since day one, and
That's great.
really excited to see the future of SLDC over the next several years.
I definitely am as well. I definitely am as well. Have you gotten a lot of if I don't know if you're allowed to say, but if so, how many applications have you gotten for the COO role so far?
Yeah, so we received within the first weekend, because we released it on a Friday. The first weekend I came back, we had like 40 resumes, and I was blown away
Okay.
because
Yeah,
that was really outside of the normal for SLDC.
sure.
Traditionally, we have like 5 or 10 resumes per position. But as we really been focused on rebranding SLDC and really talking about our vision, our purpose, we've seen not only an increase in the number of applicants, but also the quality of those applicants. So I think it's very important within the job description itself to outline the purpose of the
Mm,
organization, how that role fits within the purpose and the mission, and then what are the roles and responsibilities that each position will have, and what are some of the initial KPIs they will be measured by.
mm,
And many times that's hard to put within a job description day one, but I think it allows you to get um, qualified candidates that have a clear understanding of the role and position. But it
yes.
also allows you to communicate effectively through the interview process, exactly what you expect from this position. And so
Yeah.
when you bring that person on board, there's already a shared expectation of what they are to accomplish within each one of those respective roles and responsibilities. So Those are just some of the things that we put within that job description
Yeah. Are you
to
involved
attract.
with the writing of, or either writing and or I'm sure,
Oh yeah, for sure.
expectations, I'm sure
Yeah.
of, right.
Yeah, so within the job description itself, we include the purpose of the organization, the goals of the Economic Justice Action Plan, how the roles and responsibilities of this position actually drive that plan and strategy forward, and then some of the soft skills that are required within that role overall. And so that's been helpful to have a lot of those things out there. And then also SLDC, we are a quasi-public agency, so we are not a city department. So we have more flexible hiring practices and
Sure.
processes, where the city is very rigid. Like you have to have a certain amount of experience around a particular industry before you can even be interviewed for a job. So that just limits the ability to really attract candidates for growth opportunities.
Yes.
So we have more flexibility on our side of the house.
Great, great. That's wonderful. And how many, out of curiosity, how many rounds for at least the COO or in general for roles, how many rounds of interviews do you normally hold?
So, yeah, for the COO role, we had the initial kind of resumes and cover letters that were required. We went going through the screening process now. There will then be a panel interview where each applicant and candidate will have to present their vision and strategy for the COO role. And then they would have a final interview with me one on one before I make a final decision on who to hire. So those were the steps that we're taking as we are assessing candidates for the COO position.
You gave some great tips earlier to potential applicants for SLDC jobs, including for the COO position. I'm curious if there's any other advice, tips that you want to give to job seekers, especially those who are looking to work with an organization such as the St. Louis Development Corporation.
Yes, definitely do your research about the company. Understand, their mission, their purpose, how they're structured, their leadership team. I had a candidate that I was interviewing for HRO, and he came in. I said, "Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Neal Richardson." And then he asked me what was my role within the organization.
Whoops.
Uh, so that was a little red flag, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so I told him I was the CEO of the organization, and I think his face turned bright red during the
Oh,
meeting.
well,
So
at least he's learned for the
yeah,
future.
so it's all good. It was just one of those moments where it was embarrassing for both sides and very uncomfortable.
I
So
understand.
he again, just doing your research on the company. When I applied for the CEO position, not only did I think through the leadership team, understand the financial statements, I went through all of the documents, the organizational documents that were available for each entity that SLDC had under its purview, the financial statements, the balance sheets, the income statements, who were the previous leaders within that role, what are some of the major projects they had underway, to really assess where my skill set can be leveraged in the most impactful way to grow the agency, especially coming into the position not being in this role or in this organization previously. So
Yes.
if you're an external candidate, typically you feel as though you're at a disadvantage. But if you do your research, really study the organizational structure, the mission and purpose of the organization, you will be set up for greater success than if you don't. And just be extremely prepared as possible coming into those meetings to answer any questions, and then also have a couple questions of your own that you want to pose to the panel or to the person that's conducting the interview, because it just goes to show that you were prepared and you thought through, some of the challenges that you see within the role, and that just again creates, I think, a better dialogue and a better connection between the interviewer and the candidate.
Absolutely. That's a great, all of those tips. And the last one, particularly great too. One of my other guests in the recent past was a former inaugural senior VP of HR at Indeed, and he's had like great, really top HR roles throughout his career. His name's Paul Wolf, and he also mentioned too about the two-way street, that it's not just an interview for, let's say, yourself to the applicant. The applicant should be also, in a way, interviewing the
Yes.
corporation to see if it's the right fit for them as well.
Yeah.
So I like how you're saying being prepared, really showing that the applicant really showing that they not only done their research, like you said, but that they're also selling themselves, but also assessing, is this the right
Yes.
fit
Right.
for
Yeah.
the applicant
Exactly.
too? It has to be,
Yeah. It
it
has to
has to
be. It
have
has to be.
reciprocity.
Yeah, there has to be reciprocity there, but then also um, there has to be a shared commitment to each other.
Absolutely.
And so if you have, values that are not aligned, we had a great candidate that went through the initial screening for the COO position. And, they mentioned that they were very direct and very rigid about specific things. And you have to understand the organization and the staff within that organization around that may not be a good fit because of, how they show up.
Yeah.
And them being transparent, though, allow both of us to assess this may not be the best fit for you or for the agency, but that doesn't mean that the next opportunity isn't right for you. Because the last thing you want to do is commit to a individual or for an individual to commit to an organization and it's just not a good fit for them. And you have this personal rub that you have every time you come into the organization. And sometimes that cannot be overcome as you grow in the role itself.
So true, so true. And I guess lastly, this has been wonderful. Lastly, I would ask, where can people go to check out more about St. Louis Development Corp, as well as see what SLDC jobs are available? I see in your
Yeah.
visual there that you have the website, so I assume that's probably a great
Yeah,
place to
that
go.
is. It is. It's developed stlouis.org. And if you're looking for careers, it's just backslash careers. So we have job openings. We can learn more about our programs, our incentive projects, as well as our other products that we offer and services that we offer for businesses that are in the city. So if you're a business owner in the city, always check us out too. And if you're looking for a organization in which leads with purpose to drive economic growth, please check our website out for job postings. I think we have like 12 openings right now.
That's
So
great.
we're growing, and we have opportunities ranging from LRA maintenance staff to payroll specialist to a COO. So there's a broad range of opportunities out there that we are offering. So thank you again, Leslie, for
Yes.
your time. This has been a great interview, I guess. I hope I got the job. So this
You've
was
done quite well. I'm sure you.
yeah. This is really fun. And again, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you and raising the importance of interviews and HR in our development space, but also just as a professional. It's just important for everyone within their career to have those skills. And if people didn't know, I want to give you a shout out for helping me with my resume
Oh,
as
thank
I was
you.
applying for the CEO position at
Thank you.
SLDC.
Thank
It
you.
was really helpful to have a professionally written resume.
Yes.
I had a long list of like jobs and skills and those sort of things, and you were able to make it somehow into 2 pages out of a 15-year career. That was quite impressive and very much appreciated.
Well, thank you, thank you. And as I've said a bunch of times to you, and I'll say to our audience that Neal is a stellar. I always joke, but not joke, because I love all of my clients. But I always say that I always say he's my star client because he's just you've achieved so much within your career, and yes, and you're amazing, and I'm just blessed, and thank you for the compliment that I was able to communicate your wonderful background in 2 pages. And yeah, I'm really happy to have been able to work with you, and I think we're both appreciative on both ends, and I'm happy you got the job.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again. I don't know if I would have been that successful without you. So it just goes to show you have to invest in
Yes.
yourself. Um,
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well,
yeah,
thank you so much for
thank
your
you.
time, Neil, and your valuable information. I love this interview. I think that for job seekers in general, you gave great advice, and particularly since SLDC is hiring for, I think you said probably at least 12 positions, including the COO position. Listen up, people. He's
Yeah.
like right there from
Yeah.
the hiring manager giving you valuable tips. So thank you again so much. And
Thank you.
thanks, of course, to all our viewers for Ask the Hiring Manager. Look forward to seeing you on an upcoming episode.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks. You can hold on a minute. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. I'm Leslie Hunter, president of Resume Makeover. I've been helping job seekers for nearly a decade to acquire their dream jobs and achieve the income they desire. From entry-level applicants to C-suite executives and everyone in between. From your resume to your cover letter, LinkedIn profile, bio, or website content, I'm here for you. And now I'm going to open the door and interview some of the top hiring managers so that you can have the insight that you need to book the jobs that you want. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager.